Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at WYNNBet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
What is crack-a-lackin', Hardwood Knocks listeners? I am Dan Favale coming at you once more without my fantabulous co-host, Adam Frommel. We're going to continue plowing through our Look Ahead podcast. The Toronto Raptors are next up on our docket. I am super excited, as always, to be joined by Yasmin Duale, who covers the NBA for the Dishes and Dimes podcast. She also writes for Yahoo Sports and the Toronto Star. She had a newsletter, the Neon Playbook, she has a newsletter. It's fantastic. She said she's going to try and reboot it up during the regular season. Follow her work at Carmelo Drama, at CarmeloDrama. She's a great writer, great follow on Twitter, so go check her out. Before we get started, though, just the usual housekeeping notes. Please continue rating, reviewing, and subscribing to us wherever you get your podcasts, downloading every episode as well. If you're a first-time listener because you want to hear about the Toronto Raptors or you've stumbled upon us on accident, consider giving us that permanent subscription. We are a pleasantly sub-mediocre basketball podcast that covers the entire NBA at large. We ask everyone too, regardless of whether you use iTunes, to head over to iTunes if you have access to it, search Hardwood Knocks, throw us that 5-star rating, write a review. Both help us out a ton on the charts. Follow us on Twitter at Hardwood Knocks. You can also follow us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com. Search Hardwood Knocks, subscribe to our channel, and we are on Instagram as well, at Hardwood_Knocks. With all of those notes now out of the way, let's dig deep into the Toronto Raptors with Yasmin Duale. Yasmin, thank you so much for coming back on the Hardwood Knocks podcast to talk more Toronto Raptors with me, who are one of my siren songs entering the season. For the past few years, I haven't been able to quit them. But first and foremost, how the hell are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. I'm always down to talk Raptors.
Yeah, and there's a lot to talk about with the Raptors, and I kind of just wanted to start. Do you have any heading into the regular season, are you thinking about any themes, thoughts, just anything from the Raptors offseason, maybe even, Goran Dragic, just anything at all as we head into the regular season that still stands out to you?
I'm actually quite positive about Goran. Like, obviously, I think he touched at something traumatic for Raptors fans when he made those comments about not really wanting to be here, or I feel like I want to just believe that it was caught up in translation or something, because I'm pretty sure it was non-English. But I actually love the idea of him, being that veteran for the second unit, which is like very youthful this year for the Raptors. Usually their second units tend to be more seasoned, have a couple years of G League play under their belt, but they have guys like Scottie and Delano and Precious, just guys who have maybe not had enough, who haven't really had significant NBA playing time yet. So having a guy like Dragic with playoff experience, who's great traditional point guard. I think what separates him from Larry is that he may not have the defensive capabilities, but offensively, the gap isn't that huge between them, in my opinion. But, I actually am positive about Dragic. I'm really excited to see Scottie, how he translates into the NBA. And I think that the most exciting theme for a lot of people has been OG finally having, the space to use what he's accumulated over the years, all the skills that he's been quietly building and working on. I think that with Pascal healing from his shoulder surgery, OG will have just a prime opportunity to kind of eat up a little bit of usage and get used to the lead role, because in order for the Raptors to be successful this year, he's going to have to be the lead scorer alongside Pascal. So I think that will be the most exciting theme for the first month or so this season before Siakam gets back.
Yeah, you were the one that I believe retweeted into my timeline a video that the Raptors posted, and I had a fan myself after watching OG hit like a turnaround step back jumper. And so is that like the type of self-discovery we can expect to see from OG Anunoby on offense? And just to listeners who might not realize this from last season, like he did broadened his offensive game last year. Just when you're looking at him putting up the
Definitely.
ball on the floor, it seemed like there were more just directionality to his drives, even quicker decisions as a passer. But if he's going to test out stuff like that, I might end up watching like 82 Raptors games this year.
Yeah, and it might seem like like a shocking leap for some people, but OG's just been quietly working and perfecting just like his base level skills for so long now, for a few years now. Just working on his shooting. He's become just a really solid catch and shooter already. He's already an excellent defender. He started to the last 2 years, I'd say, he was working on his self creation. So the natural progression for him was just to improve his handle. And once he does that, it kind of just acts as the glue to kind of bring cohesiveness to all the skills that he already has been kind of working on. So, Raptors fans have been saying for a while that, like, Pascal needs that wing creator who can just kind of self-create to act as kind of like a release valve when things aren't working. Norman Powell satisfied that to like a degree, but I think that OG being, his size, the versatility in his skill set, and just other aspects that he brings can be an even more ideal partner to that offensive duo. So I'm just really excited to see him kind of just have the opportunity to just finally do it, because once Norm was traded, I think he went on to average 19 points per game or around that. So I think he has like the capability. So just to see it in action in a normal setting for a season in Toronto will be really exciting for fans.
I still don't, and I'm not one that's just going to root for players being on bargain contracts, but I don't know how they got him for 3 years and $72 million. It still doesn't compute to me. That is going to end up being one of the most team-friendliest deals in the NBA, I think, over the next few years. So is there a timeline for Siakam's return from his left shoulder injury surgery? And while this isn't scientific, I think this is scientific. People clearly underrated the year he had last year, even though it wasn't great by his standards. Like aside from just if you look at the perimeter shooting, like there was still a lot to like about his game and a lot of the efficiency rebounded. The non-scientific part of this for me is that the vibes around him just seem better this season. And so between that and the Raptors playing again in Toronto, once he is healthy, do you expect this to be sort of I don't want to say bounce back year, but more of a universally appreciated year from Pascal Siakam?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the expectation for the upcoming season is different. Like, if you look at the expectations that have been put on him from, being the second lead scorer alongside Kawhi Leonard on a championship aspiring team, then the next season is the championship defense, and then the next season after that is like trying to pick up the pieces after that bubble run against the Celtics. So, it's just a series of really high pressure moments for a guy who's just trying to, I think, find his identity as a lead or co-lead scorer on a team. So, I think people are just excited to see him in a more normal environment, on a younger team that might be more catered to what a 27-year-old, former All-Star should be expected to accomplish on a team. Those championship aspirations can be in the future, but right now, I think that he should be allowed to develop as a leader. All of the other things that we kind of give grace to other All-Stars to accomplish, I think fans are like kind of just willing to extend that to him now. And I think he spoke a little bit about how his lingering shoulder injury was just kind of hindering him the last season, affecting his left-handed dribble. It affected how he was able to move on the court. And, I wouldn't be surprised if it had a bit of an impact on his shooting. So I can't wait to see him play at full health. And I'm really excited to see how he does as now he's among the veterans on the team, among the older players on the team. I think only Dragic would be older than him, or Kem rather. Kem and Dragic are the only older players, whereas he was always the baby of the team. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic now, and I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how him and Fred fill out that role.
Yeah, and so you already mentioned how OG will have to definitely pick up offensive slack when you're looking at Siakam's injury, and then Dragic. I think you were right. He naturally replaced a lot of what Kyle Lowry does on offense. You won't feel it till you get on defense. But Fred VanVleet early on, I'm assuming, is just going to have to be like the most important offensive player for him. And while I would be more inclined to pick OG as a most improved candidate, I feel like Fred VanVleet's name gets floated in that conversation.
Oh yeah,
every year. What does he need to do better to be the number one option in Siakam's absence effectively, and two, to actually actualize this most improved player chatter that, again, he is always garnering, at least over like the past 3 years or whatever it's been?
Yeah, Fred, like, it's interesting because he does have his limitations that we acknowledge. His finishing, his size, like, these are things that he has to work to overcome. But like, the thing about Fred is that he somehow always finds a way. He always finds a way. Like, he will have, like, I'm pretty sure he had like a 50-point game before, and he always finds a way to become whatever the team needs at any given moment, which is like a very Lowry-esque trait. So I can't wait to see how he figures out what he's needed to be on this team for next season, and how he becomes that. Because weirdly enough, I don't doubt that he'll figure it out somehow, and he'll figure out how to keep the team afloat while things line up for them. So I think it's just going to be a matter of him being more of a shooting guard than a point guard. I wouldn't be surprised if the playmaking burden was kind of more evenly distributed throughout the team, and that Fred was just asked to be a scorer, because I think that he is a better scorer than he is a pure point guard. So I think that's the reason why people were kind of confused as to why Nick Nurse mentioned that Dragic could possibly be starting alongside Fred, and I would not be surprised if that happens in the beginning of the season, so that Dragic can be the point guard and Fred can be the shooting guard, which is like a really good dynamic that was between him and Lowry. I don't know how Fred will take it, because I know that he thinks of himself as a point guard, but I think they're really going to need him to score, which he's 100% capable of doing, and which would honestly end up helping his most improved player, the chatter around that, because his the surface level points per game and all that would be more, it would be bolstered by him taking on that role.
When you watch him, do you see hope for him to become like a better finisher, as someone who shot 38% on drives last year and has always been kind of just iffy in that area of the game?
I think it ultimately comes down to him figuring out how to navigate the pick and roll as a ball handler, and honestly as a pocket passer a little better. Okay. I find that his game on the perimeter is really good. Like, I think that some of Fred's most iconic plays is coming off the screen on the perimeter. He just has his ability to just square himself to the basket really quickly and get off a shot without having it, blocked or contested in any way. But something about him getting to the basket, just a lot of you could see the gears moving in his head. I think he overthinks it. And I think that when it comes to Fred, he doesn't really have, I always mention that he doesn't have the athleticism. I think that he's a little more injury prone in that sense. But for Fred, I think it will come down to how his relationship with the big in that scenario, and also his ability to absorb contact. Because I don't think he's going to get the lift that Lowry does at that. I don't think he'll get the shake or the ability to create distance or space between him and the trailing defender like a Kyrie or something. But I think that if Fred becomes a guy who can just take a hit and somehow finish it, he'll have a little more success as a finisher. But I think that his future is just honestly improving his mid-range, which I think was causing a lot of the issue with the finishing. He really did improve that aspect of his game, but people would not respect his shot as a mid-range shooter, not because he couldn't make it, but because he wouldn't take that shot. Right. So the defender will be lingering under the basket, which, was just ultimately asking for a block. So I think that improving his ability to withstand the blows around the basket, and also to take those mid-range shots, will ease it up. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see the work that he did the last season in improving his mid-range shot show up on scouting reports and allow him to create a little bit of distance on his way to the basket as well.
Yeah, he did. And he looked like he just improved his off the dribble shooting game in general last year, which I think this team needs that, especially with, that's like Dragic can do that, but he definitely, I know Kyle Lowry had a down year last year, but I still think Lowry was more of a threat to do stuff like that.
No team can afford to overpay for talent. Build a championship team with Indeed the smart way by only paying for quality candidates that meet your must-have requirements. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. When hiring gets hard, you need Indeed, the job site that makes hiring incredibly simple. Just attract, interview, and hire. In fact, with Indeed, you can do all of your hiring in one place, even interviewing. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Indeed knows how important it is to make the most of your recruiting hours and dollars. With Indeed, you can save time and money by setting your must-have qualifications and only paying for the quality candidates that meet them. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Offer valid through October 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey guys, looking for a betting advantage this football season? You need to download BetQL, the only app you'll need to compare betting odds and make smart bets. Their best bet computer model scans over 350,000 unique bets per year to give you a best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports and gives you the reasoning behind why you should place the bet. Their model covers everything from spreads, over-unders, and player prop bets. Don't want to use this model and prefer to do the research yourself? Well, BetQL has all the necessary tools for your betting research needs. Tools like line movement and sharp data on who the pros are backing, team summaries highlighting previous success against the spread and over-under, team lineup breaking news and injury status updates, and leaderboards to track how you stack up against others and to view your winning streaks. Better data, better bets. Head to the App Store or Google Play Store now to download BetQL. You can also head to try.betql.co/Blue Wire to get started now. Enter the discount code BLUEWIRE at payment checkout for 25% off any of their subscription offerings. Make sure to check out their offers page to find a special offer to receive a full free year of BetQL. Don't miss out on the chance to gain your betting advantage during this football season.
I feel like I buried the lead to start this podcast, though. The Raptors offseason was weird in some. I ended up just because I'm higher on the roster in general, the fact that they kept Masai, I just defaulted to, you know what, that's fine. I didn't love how the Kyle Lowry chain of events played out from the trade deadline on, but you kept Masai, that's huge. However, the Scottie Barnes over Jalen Suggs selection, how did you feel about that? And I know he's endeared himself to the fan base since. He seems like one of the best personalities to come out of the draft, but I think Nick Nurse mentioned that they're going to give him as many minutes as possible. So do you actually think that he's going to get, real license to make mistakes and a ton of leeway with this team in year one?
I don't know if they have any other choice. I think just out of necessity, he will be getting those minutes. And one thing I noticed about Scottie is that he's the type of guy who's going to be doing whatever it takes to just simply win. I don't think he's concerned about how he'll look as a rookie, about first team all rookie, about rookie of the year sort of things. I think he's just concerned about winning as a team. It's just a common theme he's always mentioning. He has not once mentioned those other aspirations. Like we've heard Jalen Green talk about his rookie of the year aspiration. Like Scottie is just simply concerned with having this team win basketball games, which I think is so important in a rookie. And I take some credit for the huge turnaround, like the 180 that the fan base did after draft night, because me and Sean Woodley immediately recorded on Locked On Raptors, and we were just kind of, I was talking him off the cliff and just telling the fan base that I think that they're going to end up loving this pick, and it sort of does make sense for the direction that the team has been discussing in terms of just filling their roster with versatile wings and versatile small forwards. I think it's the Raptors are just hoarding those type of players who can just kind of play all positions, do a little bit of everything. And if they can't shoot, they can't shoot. If there's one thing that the Toronto Raptors can do is turn somebody into a decent shooter. Like, they have a pretty good resume at that sort of thing. So if you have a player like Scottie who is has an amazing personality, which is so important in terms of a lottery pick who's expected to lead a roster in the future, when you talk about his defensive capabilities, his ability as a playmaker at his size, a ball handler at his size, the shooting thing kind of just seems like a drop in the bucket. And judging by what him and Nick Nurse have said, it's something that they've already begun tweaking over the off season, and I'm excited to see how it looks in comparison to his film in college. It's funny because I didn't hear. I was covering March Madness, and I didn't hear much Scottie Barnes talk until quite close to the draft. That's when I think the word was Scottie Barnes, and it's no surprise because he was going to these workouts and the draft combines and whatnot, and scouts were seeing this guy and how just he had this contagious personality. He had this endless source of energy, and people just wanted him on their team. So it's no surprise to me that the Raptors ended up going with him, and I'm just really excited to see how he translates into NBA basketball, because this guy was 19 not a couple weeks ago, and he's bigger than OG Anunoby. So I just want to see how he gets around. Like I remember how awkward it was for OG being young, being like 6'7" or whatever, like 230 or something. So I just want to see if we have like that same baby deer effect, or if Scottie's more used to it.
Yeah, I didn't watch really any film from him in college. And so in summer league, it took me aback at how fluent he seemed, or comfortable working off the dribble and changing directions. And I could see dudes bouncing off of him if he ever.
Yeah, that was a surprising thing. I went to summer league and I was just shocked by how this guy would just put his head down and dribble straight to the basket, which is kind of something that, a 6'9" guy would kind of avoid, just because of how high the dribble is, and you kind of get nervous about that sort of thing. But his ability to just use his speed, his size, and be willing to use it to his advantage off the rip was just really impressive.
Do you still view? I mean, the Raptors are clearly trying to set a record to house the most players between 6'7" and 6'9" on their team. I think. Do you still, last year, and it's something, as someone who just loves smaller lineups, I never would have. I didn't think the need for a center was as drastic, but the constant refrain was, "Oh, they need a true center. They need to get bigger," and they proceeded this offseason to not acquire a true center or get really bigger. And so, do you still view that as a weakness on this team? Was it an overblown weakness to begin with?
I think it's both. It's a weakness, but I think it's overblown as well. I think that when you talk about the need for a true center, like, you're talking about Embiid, you're talking about Jokic, you're talking about the top centers in the NBA that you'll have to watch out for. And I think that the Raptors have shown that they can deal with those guys with their 6'7" to 6'9" players. OG Anunoby, I think he's among the best Jokic defenders in the NBA right now. I think that they believe that if they're willing to minimize the other four threats on the court, it'll kind of, it will kind of increase the difficulty for the center, especially the ones that rely on passing, like Jokic. The one thing about the Jokic game, I think it was the last game that the Raptors played against the Nuggets, was that Jokic because Jokic had OG on him, he would rely on kicking out the ball. Like, he'd try and draw the attention and kick it out. But he just had so many guys on the court with like 7'2" wingspans that they're just passing lane steals every other possession. So I think that there's no perfect defense. You know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be the Achilles heel for every defensive scheme, for every defensive lineup that you throw out there. Like, if there's a big on the court, he can be exposed by a pick and roll dominant point guard, or a point guard that can really work the perimeter. If you put there's just there are weaknesses. There's weaknesses to zone defense. You leave yourself exposed in certain areas of the court. So I think that I think they've concluded that this is the one with the least amount of kinks in the armor.
Is this like I mean, you know how I feel about Chris Boucher, obviously, having been on this podcast before. Is there a chance that he ends up sort of playing a smaller role to Khem Birch if he doesn't get more disciplined on the defensive end? And I think Nick Nurse kind of talked about they want him to be less, chaotic on that side of the floor, or is he this team's, I don't want to ascribe positions to anyone on this team, or is Chris Boucher just their best option at center?
I think they've shown like a willingness to play him at power forward. So I think it all ends up relying on how Scottie is used. So how Scottie is used is going to have a bit of a domino effect about the depth at the 4 for the Raptors. So I think that depending on that, if they're thin at the 4, then I think that we're going to see Boucher play perhaps alongside Khem for some lineups. So I don't think anyone is promised minutes on this team to an extent. I don't think there are any lineup promises. I think that Nick Nurse will truly spend the whole season just figuring out what looks best. So we're going to see I think they broke records last season for the amount of lineup versatility that they threw out there. Obviously out of necessity towards the end of the season, but I don't think anyone is promised minutes. And I think that with Chris Boucher, I honestly thought he was going to be traded in the offseason just because he's outperformed his value so much, and that I think that they could have gotten a great return for him. So I don't think that they're going to be compromising that increase in value they've gotten from Chris Boucher. So I think just out of that, they're going to put him on the court to shoot, to catapult those threes into the hoop. So I think that he's still gonna be a major player heading into next season.
And it really might not matter who plays center for the Raptors, because OG just might end up guarding the 5s anyway, as happened so much last season. So I understand that. You mentioned no one's guaranteed minutes, though. Do you expect Precious Achiuwa to get a crack at the rotation, or is he just very much kind of potentially an afterthought on this team?
I think I just read a quote just before we started recording where Nick Nurse said that he'll be in the thick of things immediately. And that's no surprise, because when I was watching those summer league games, Precious is people don't talk about it. He might have had I think a lack of opportunity playing on the Heat, and perhaps maybe they weren't asking of him what he was capable of doing. But I think on this team, he'll just be allowed to be himself. And that is a guy who can really fill in the gaps on the offense, which is such an underrated skill. I think it's how Pascal Siakam kind of showed up on the radar in that early 2018 season, where as just a guy who takes advantage of people looking at the other names on the court. You know what I mean? So I think that he showed just an ability to catch and head straight for the hoop while the other team is still mentally adjusting to what is happening right now. So I think that Nick Nurse sees value in that. So I can't wait to see Precious. I feel like he's going to be a fan favorite very quickly.
What type of role could we expect Malachi Flynn to play in year 2?
I think that he's going to have a big role, especially if Dragic ends up starting alongside Fred and Gary Trent Jr. comes off the bench. Malachi is going to be leading a second unit in that case. And I think that, he still has, I think he still needs to improve his shooting, but he's, I rarely see Malachi make the wrong pass. He's someone who can really be molded into a traditional point guard. I see a very solid, dependable 6-man in as his future. So I think that they're going to really lean into that and allow him to take a bit of a leadership role with the bench. Even if Dragic ends up coming off the bench, I think that Malachi would be a major player regardless.
And so you view him as someone who has the playmaking chops to lead potentially second units as the primary ball handler?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I feel like if he does end up leading the bench units, it would be the playmaking burden would be heavier than the scoring burden for him. So I do think that he's capable, especially alongside someone like Scottie, someone like Precious, even Yuta. He's going to be alongside guys who have varying degrees of playmaking ability, but none of them are minus on that end. So I feel like when you have a dynamic like that, it can be a more egalitarian second unit, and that he can be allowed to thrive in that sort of situation because the pressure will be not as heavy, but it would still be there to allow him to develop in that sense.
Did Yuta Watanabe do enough last year, show enough last year to kind of be viewed as like a regular member of this rotation, to not be looped into the question I sent you, like, oh, who has better longer term impact or is more intriguing for this team when you look at Shvi Mikhailuk, Freddie G, etc.?
Yeah, I think that Yuta is very he's very defensively disciplined, which I think is something that coaches love. You could tell just the chat about him from coaching, from other players. They adore Yuta. He's very dependable on the court, and I think that his skill set, I believe he's a decent or a reliable corner three shooter. He is a high IQ defender. He makes the correct reads. He's just like a great wing to have as like an eighth man on the court. And I think that he's like the vital type of player that I think that a lot of developing rosters need. You just need that solid wing piece, because you don't want to have holes on those aspects of the roster, especially when you're trying to develop a lottery pick or develop someone like Malachi, or I feel like it would have, without having Yuta, it would have added holes to the roster that would have been, they just would have spent the whole season trying to rearrange and supplement, and I think that he eases a lot of those worries.
And I know he's 6'9", but he seems to just defend bigger than that too. Like when he's on the perimeter, his presence just feels so huge, and he does feel like he keeps the ball moving on offense as well. So I like him a bunch. When you look at sort of the either fringe rotation or fringe roster guys, is there anyone specifically that intrigues you? Looking at the Freddie G's, Isak Bongas, Shvi Mikhailuk's, etc.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say Delano Banton, who they drafted in the second round this offseason. Not only because he's from my childhood neighborhood, but it's nice having a hometown kid on the team, but also the fact that he's a 6'9" point guard is very intriguing. I saw him play at Summer League, and he is. Sometimes when someone is 6'9", they're calling you a point guard. I'm going to say, the definition of the term is obviously being used loosely, but no, this guy's like literally a point guard on the court. And I think that he's going to get a lot of run with the Raptors 905. So I'm really excited to see how he develops in that system. I'm going to have to catch a couple of 905 games to see how that goes. But yeah, like if it works out, that is a very, very interesting player archetype to have on the roster.
Yeah, and they seem to really believe in him. I know there are questions about his jumper just based off how he shot from three in college and at the foul line, but they gave him a partial guarantee in year 2, which I don't know if that's like super rare for someone who was drafted 40. What was he, 46, 47 around there?
Yeah, I think he was towards the end there.
But it didn't stun me because hey, he's 6'9", and the Raptors are just collecting those guys like trading cards.
You're in. If you're 6'9", you're in.
So what's so both interesting and maddening about this team is, I don't want to frame it as what's the direction, but what makes them so hard to project is they don't feel like a team that's going to settle for the middle this year. Whereas if it just looks like they're not a top 4 team in the East, you could see them sort of steering out of any real postseason positioning. Is that the energy around the team? Are they just committed to this is not a rebuilding year, but we're more concerned with the bigger picture and player development than we are even making the playoffs? Or do you think that they're entering with the mindset of we want to see what we have here because we do think that we have the potential to finish closer to the top of the East than a lot of people expect?
I think it's a bit of both. I think that they think that the potential of this current roster is far more than what people are expecting. And I also think that they are looking at the bigger picture. So perhaps they can crack the top, 5 or so, the Eastern Conference. Playing in Toronto, I think will boost them more than people can imagine. I don't think people realize how impactful playing in Tampa was, not just from the no fans aspect, but you're not in your training facility. You're not used to the amenities that you were
they're on the
enjoying
road
for years.
for the entire
Exactly.
year. Like that's what happens.
And what we expect of road games, like if the team loses, you're like, oh, but they were on the road. So, I think that people are underestimating the impact that would have on them for the season, but also I think that the bigger picture is something that Masai was really emphasizing at his press conference. He really believes in the core of this roster, and I think that he even compared it to like 2014 Raptors, where this is a team whose direction was in question.
Okay.
And he kind of just let Lowry and DeRozan cook, see what kind of culture they could develop. I think that Masai is going to take a bit of a hands-off approach in the season. I'm not expecting major trades, is what I mean.
Right.
So I think he's going to see, like, can these guys find those personalities, find that spark, build that new culture that they're going to need, because the We the North era has kind of wind down with the absence of Lowry now. So I think he's going to allow them to just find their own identity for a bit, and take it from there, maybe heading into the season after the next. So I'm not expecting any major changes. I'm not expecting any major pressure. I'm not expecting any huge pivot into tanking again or anything like that. If they're out of the playoffs, I don't think they're going to make a concerted effort to lose every game after that.
What is when you look at this roster, what stands out to you as sort of their biggest functional weakness right now, whether it's if you're looking at a specific position or if it's just a player archetype type deal?
Maybe a Kyle Lowry type. If they could like nab a 28-year-old Kyle Lowry, that would have been. I would have had this team penciled in for the finals, but I think that the weakness would perhaps be that seasoned, all-star caliber player, which Pascal can very well become that in the next couple of years. But I think as it stands right now, if they just had another guy alongside him, this is a team that I would have had, as Eastern Conference Finals. That would have been like their aspiration, in my opinion, if they have just a player who was perhaps at the 2-guard position, who could just act as that offensive release valve, be someone that can just bring some dynamic spacing to the court. So I think that that's what they're missing right now. I think that the issue heading into next season, or the concern for Nick Nurse, will be how can we maximize the offensive tools we have here without relying every night on having the opposition score 70, because that's not sustainable in today's NBA.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't even know if it would need to be like a star guy. It just feels like they're individual shot creator short of being
like
really
CJ
special.
McCollum would have just been adequate, I think, like nothing crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe Gary Trent Jr. or Scottie Barnes, even OG Anunoby kind of surprises you in that regard, but it seems like they're that type of player short. You mentioned you don't expect any major trades, which I actually think makes it easier to project their over-under when we get there. But if you had to pick a player right now that's most likely to be dealt, who would it be?
I'd say if Gary Trent has a great run heading into the trade deadline, I think that he's a candidate, as well as because I feel like Gary Trent's contract, I forgot what it was. I think it was like a 3-year, $50 million or something like that. I think it's
a
set
player
up
option on year 3, because Clutch Sports is very good at negotiating contracts.
I think that if he came guns blazing when he was traded to the Raptors, he was literally breaking plus minus records. Like he was like, people were like, did we just trade for like Zach LaVine or something? I think that if he has a run where he's just, that shot is going down, where he is figuring out how to finish and he just looks really good, I think that he's going to be a major candidate to be traded. I think that Chris Boucher is my number one, though. Just because he's just outperformed his contract so much, and I think that he's the type of player that a lot of teams would just love to have, like a almost 7-footer who can shoot the ball. I think now we can call Chris Boucher a shooter.
Yeah,
I gave it a couple years, but I think that he's just like a great shooter. Like he has the unique form and everything, and I feel like he has a lot of use on a bunch of rosters.
Yeah, look, among all Raptors players last year who played at least 500 minutes, Chris Boucher led the Raptors in effective field goal percentage on pull-up jumpers. That's my Chris Boucher pitch.
Not surprising. That passes the eye test too. He was not missing.
So what do you think should be their go-to crunch time lineup in close games?
I think there are a lot of variables that can affect this, like how like who they're playing against, how Scottie looks. Like there are a lot, but I think that I think my ideal, just as it stands, closing lineup would be at full health would be OG, Pascal, Dragic, Freddie, and I'm going to say Scottie because I want him to get those reps. But I think that's a lineup that kind of gives you a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. I think that all the players on the court are intelligent enough and quick on their feet enough to make up for any defensive leakages on part of like Dragic. I think Dragic will also bring some offensive stability on the court. He can, run pick and roll with OG, with Pascal. Like there's a lot of variation possible there. I think that would be my idea. And I think that the reps for Scottie would be great too. So I think that there's ample shooting, defense, and just brain on the court at that time.
Yeah, and it's definitely matchup based. The question I really had is how many of those tight crunch time units will Scottie Barnes be involved in, which also just might be telltale of how invested they are in the bigger picture over just winning casual games. Let's say you're Nick Nurse. What is the lineup that you need to roll out? The quirkiest, out of left field, wonky lineup you can think of?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a 3-point guard lineup this year. We've seen the 2-point guard ones. I wouldn't be surprised if there was perhaps a time against a smaller team, maybe against I want to say like the Bulls. I feel like the Bulls have a lot of guards. I think like I wouldn't be surprised if they fielded lineups of like Lonzo, DeRozan, and Levine at once or something.
Yeah, DeRozan's going to end up playing some power forward for them probably.
Perhaps, yeah. I think that against the correct type of team, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Freddie Dragic and Malachi, or Freddie Dragic and Gary Trent on the court with like another 2 forwards.
Mine would be, and I think it's maybe it's partly morbid curiosity, but I feel like they almost have to try this too at some point. You need to go with like the all 6'9" lineup?
Oh yeah, How can
let's get Siakam, Precious Achiuwa, Yuta, have OG on there, and then Scottie. Like that. I don't know what that offense looks like.
It might be perfect.
Yeah, I need to see
that lineup has everything. They have playmaking, defense, shooting. Like that could be very, very fascinating.
So as of when we're recording this, their win total over under is set at 36.5. Would you take the over under on that? And where do you see them largely stacking up relative to the rest of the East?
I'm going to take a look right now at what last season's record was, because I feel like that'll influence. You could tell I was not paying attention last season to the exact win-loss record.
Yeah, I mean, down the stretch of the season for them, it got pretty rough. And that 36.5
that's when I checked out.
Super low for them to me. Like this would be one of my best bets, but I feel like I'm too high on the Raptors because of how easy it is for me to smash that over.
Okay, yeah. So I think last season, so 27-45, shortened season, 72-game season. It was a struggle. They somehow won 27 games last season, playing some of the worst basketball I've ever seen. Like with the top players on the rotation just absent for the last month or two.
Yeah, they weren't trying to win and still were at a 31 win pace overall.
Yeah, so I think I would not. I honestly, I'd give the over under. I would say that my prediction would be for an 82 game season. I don't see them losing. I don't see them winning any less than 40, in my opinion. This is a 40-plus win team, I think.
It's funny that I guess I'm higher on the Raptors than you are at this point. Like, are you thinking they're like 7-8 in the East at this point then?
I think what complicates it is how the absence of Siakam affects them in the beginning, how much they experiment as well. How do they just pivot to let the young guns like do whatever they want on the court, get their feet wet for the season? Like I don't know what their philosophical approach will be to the season, which can impact it. But the Raptors, you always bet the over on the Raptors, always. Like the last 8 years, you bet the over.
I have not gone through like my official win totals yet for the podcast that we record here, but as of right now, when I was doing like the cursory to put it together, I have the Raptors in 4th or 5th in the East for me this year. I think because the Siakam injury, maybe I'm not weighting it heavily enough because I don't even know when he's expected to return, but based off the way that they can play defense on paper anyway, it feels like they're built to really overachieve during the regular season. What happens offensively in the postseason is a different story altogether. But when you look at this roster, if they get relatively good health, I feel like it's one that wins a lot more games than people are projecting.
Those are my favorite kind of seasons. The overachieving, the no national TV games and overachieving is my favorite combination. But I have a question. What is your win-loss projection for what's your seeding projection for the Knicks?
Oh, for the Knicks? So I have the Knicks right now in play-in territory.
Really?
I don't see how the defensive success holds when I do.
Okay.
I respect what they did leaning into shot creation, but you lost your most important perimeter defender in Reggie Bullock. You leaned very heavily into shot creation to now where RJ Barrett is probably going to have to guard the opposition's best wing, or we're talking Evan Fournier, Alec Burks at that point, which will be probably a disaster. They got super lucky on opponent 3-point shooting last year. And maybe the base defense around the rim should still be good, especially when Mitch gets healthy. But I don't know. Julius Randle was so good last year, and you have to think even with more room, I would expect his efficiency to fall. So as of right now, the teams I have in front of them are the Raptors, the Celtics, the Nets, and the Bucks, obviously, the Sixers, and did I say the Hawks yet? So I have 6 or 7 teams in front of them at the moment.
Oh, okay. So not even the Bulls are in that round too.
I am so unbelievably low on the Bulls.
Me too.
I tend to think DeMar DeRozan is underappreciated now, and I could not envision a worse fit for him at the moment than Chicago.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of the overachievers of last year translate into the upcoming season. Because I always say, for every projection you have, there's going to be like 3 teams that just it doesn't work. Like there's always something. There's always that one or two. I'm going to say 1 or 2 teams, not 3 teams, but 1 or 2 teams that everyone expected to just amaze end up falling completely flat. It happens every season. So I'm interested to see which teams those are this year.
And there's in the East specifically, when you look at kind of Boston, Washington, Indiana, Charlotte, and I think you definitely throw Toronto in there, and then you can throw Chicago because they have a bunch of really good players. Like a couple of those teams are going to pop if they get, when you look at the Celtics, Washington, and Indiana, Toronto specifically, better health than they did last year. And so it just feels like the middle of the Eastern Conference is so, I think aside from Brooklyn and Milwaukee, you could tell me, unless you told me it was Detroit, Cleveland, or Orlando, you can tell me any other team finishes 3rd, and I would probably believe you.
Yeah. That's what it's looking like, yeah.
Is there anyone or anything related to this Raptors squad that I did not ask you about that you think needs to be covered?
I think we discussed literally every aspect of the organization.
Not a lot of Gary Trent Jr. talk, I guess.
Oh, no, yeah. I mentioned his contract, but that's about it. Yeah. I like Gary. Gary's great.
I actually love Gary Trent Jr. I'm just curious to see how good he, like, is there any more layers to his offensive game than what he does already? Please go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think he's underrated defensively too. And the contract amount I didn't bat an eyelash at it. I'm just like, you really only have 2 years of him now, because if he plays up to par in this contract, that puts you in a weird position. And I think, your point about maybe he plays his way onto the trade block is especially salient now when you just look at that contract structure.
Oh yeah, and I think that his age helps. Like he's just kind of built to be a tradable contract right now. But I like Gary. I'm interested to see if he makes any effort to improve with his finishing. That was one of the critiques people had with the upcoming season. Like, is he gonna, rely on the flashy baseline turnaround fadeaway or something? Or is he going to use the opportunity to, get to the rim? So the Raptors just need as many players as possible attempting to get to the rim. So I'm interested to see if he takes on that responsibility.
He is the rare player, as you mentioned, that's younger than expected. I think there's a lot of players you look at and you forget how old they actually are. And then it's like, oh, he's 22. His biggest flaw to me, though, is that he's not 6'9". It's only 6'5", 6'6".
Change that, Gary.
Yasmin, can you please let our listeners know where they can follow you on social media and check out your work?
At Carmelo Drama on Twitter. I think the upcoming season, I'm going to be covering a lot more Raptors. I think it was more wider NBA for the last season, but heading into next season, I'm going to be covering the Raptors regularly in a column for Yahoo Sports Canada. So be sure to check that out. Dishes and Dimes as well every Monday morning.
That's a great podcast. And seriously, juice that follower account at Carmelo Drama, because your former account, you're the same fantastic follow, but that's a social media tragedy that it was permanently suspended. So at Carmelo Drama, spelled exactly as it sounds. Yasmin, as always, thank you so much for coming on and indulging my Raptors questions. And I'm sure, as you know now, I will be pestering you again in the future.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at WYNNBet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.